A punchline concludes a joke. It is intended to make people laugh. It is the third and final part of the typical joke structure. It follows the introductory framing of the joke and the narrative which sets up for the punchline. In a broader sense, punchline can also refer to the unexpected and funny conclusion of any performance, situation or story. Etymology: even though the comedic formula using the classic setup, premise, punchline format was well established in vaudeville by the beginning of the 20th century, the actual term or a punchline is first documented in the 1920s. The Merriam-Webster dictionary pegs the first use at 1921. Linguistic analysis of punchline: a linguistic interpretation of the mechanics of the punchline/response is posited by Victor Raskin in his script-based semantic theory of humor. Humor is evoked when a trigger, contained in the punchline, causes the audience to abruptly shift its understanding of the story from the primary interpretation to a secondary, opposing interpretation. The punchline is the pivot on which the joke text turns as it signals the shift between the semantic scripts necessary to reinterpret the joke text. To produce the humor in the verbal joke, the two interpretations need to be both compatible with the joke text and opposite or incompatible with each other. Thomas A. Schultz, a psychologist, independently expands Raskin's unregistered trademark linguistic theory to include two stages of incongruity, perception and resolution. He explains that incongruity alone is insufficient to account for the structure of humor. Within this framework, humor appreciation is conceptualized as a biphasic sequence involving first the discovery of incongruity followed by a resolution of the incongruity. Resolution generates laughter. Jokes without a punchline. In order to better elucidate the structure and function of the punchline, it is useful to look at some joke forms which purposely remove or avoid the punchline in their narrative. Shaggy dog stories are long-winded anti-jokes in which the punchline is deliberately anticlimactic. The humor here lies in fooling the audience into expecting a typical joke with a punchline. Instead they listen to nothing funny, and end up themselves as the butt of the joke. Another type of anti-joke is the nonsense joke, defined as having a surprising or incongruous punchline which provides either no resolution at all, or only a partial, unsatisfactory resolution. One example of this is the no-soap radio punchline. Here the anticipated resolution to the joke is absent and the audience becomes the butt of the joke. Punchlines and jab lines: a joke contains a single story with a single punchline at the end. In the analysis of longer humorous texts, an expanded model is needed to map the narratological structure. With this in mind, the general theory of verbal humor was expanded to include longer humorous texts together with jokes, using the GTVH narrative structure to categorize them. A new term was introduced to designate humor within the body of a text, as opposed to the a punchline which is always placed at the end. The jab line is functionally identical to the punchline except it can be positioned anywhere within the text, not just at the end. Jab and punchlines are semantically indistinguishable, but they differ at a narratological level. Additionally, jab lines are humorous elements fully integrated in the narrative in which they appear. Using the expanded narrative structure of the GTVH and this new terminology of jab lines, literature and humor researchers now have a single theoretical framework with which they can analyze and map any kind of verbal humor, including novels, short stories, TV sitcoms, plays, movies as well as jokes. Footnotes. References: Attardo, Salvatore. A Primer for the Linguistics of Humor. In Raskin, Victor. Primer of Humor Research, Humor Research 8. Berlin, New York. Mouton de Guitra pages 101–156. Attardo, Salvatore. Humorous Texts, A Semantic and Pragmatic Analysis. Berlin, New York, Mouton de Guitra. Pages 83. Carroll, Amy. Raskin, Victor, ed. Primer of Humor Research, Humor Research 8 inches. Berlin, New York. Mouton de Guitra pages 303–332. Klopicki, W. The Linguistic Analysis of Jokes. Journal of Pragmatics. Raskin, Victor. Semantic Mechanisms of Humor. Dordgt, Boston, Lancaster, D. Reidel. Rutch, Willibald. Psychology of Humor. In Raskin, Victor. Primer of Humor Research, Humor Research 8. Berlin, New York, Mouton de Guitra pages 17-100. Schultz, Thomas R. A Cognitive Developmental Analysis of Humor. Humor and Laughter, Theory, Research and Applications, 11-36.